NIL Now, a podcast dedicated to the name, image, and likeness of today's college and high school athletes.
Name, image, and likeness is a good thing for players.
NIL Now, where the stars of tomorrow are getting noticed today.
It's time to make a statement.
Lauren Sisler.
So we're going to explore the crazy and wildly interesting world of name, image, and likeness.
And Kevin Jones.
It's the Wild Wild West, but we're wrangling it in, and we're also keeping our eyes on it with this show.
This is NIL Now, presented by Headline Studio and Reddit.
I think the guests and the stories that we talk about will bring a lot of insight to what people want to know about NIL.
I love that.
From NJ.com and the Star Ledger, welcome to the Rutgers Rant, your one-stop podcast for the Scarlet Knights, with your hosts Steve Politti and Rutgers insiders Brian Fonseca and Pat Lenny. Let's start shopping.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the Rant. 55-10 loss to Penn State. Fellas, I want to start with the post-game press conference because Greg Schiano is now leaning on a couple of talking points, and I'm not sure if either one holds water, and I want to get your opinion on it because I think that's kind of all we have left at this point is the talking points about where this program is heading. And the one that's just getting me every time is we're better now than we were in September. We're better in November than September. He said it a million times. He said it before the game, after the game. Well, you played your first Big Ten game against Iowa and you gave them 2 touchdowns. You played your 11th Big Ten game against Penn State and you gave them 3 touchdowns. I get it. The competition is better, but we're seeing the same mistakes over and over again. And I guess that's what I come back with. I'm just not sure if this is a better team now in November than it was in Iowa. I guess there are individual things that are better. Ryan, you watched the film. I mean, am I wrong? Is there something that's there that is so much better, improved, that I'm just not seeing with my meager non-coaching eyes here? I mean, what's your take on this?
My eyes are also meager and non-coaching, so I don't know if I can provide much better analysis, but I think you touched on one of my main points is that they're playing better competition, right? They played in the last three of the last 4 weeks. They played Penn State, Michigan, and Minnesota. So 2 teams in the top 10 and one of the better defenses in the Big Ten. So that needs to be taken into account. And when you're comparing Iowa to Penn State, Iowa was Evan Simon making the mistakes. Penn State was Gavin Wimsatt making the mistakes. So there's different personnel as well. There's been no continuity. So they haven't really had a chance to get better in that time. All that being said, I totally agree that they're not making tangible progress that where they can say they are better in November. Again, the comparison points are not great, but I'm watching the offense especially. I think that's the most worrying side of the ball by far. I thought that was probably their worst game of the season. They gave up 15 tackles for loss. That is absurd. That the offense again, and this is an offensive line without a starting center, starting a true freshman at left guard. I get all of that, but those numbers are insane, and it's tough for Gavin Wimsatt to be able to do much. And listen, we'll talk about his accuracy issues later on, I guess, but when he's getting pressured on 17 of his 34 dropbacks, it's hard to ask any quarterback to do much in that. So, but to answer your question, I agree with you. I don't really see, if there is any progress, I don't really see much of it.
The second talking point, the thin margin thing. And this comes back a bunch of times that we just, we'll get the quote about the ebbs and flow. Every game is its own story. That Rutgers is there, but there's a play goes the other way and the wheels fall off. And the example in this one was the Rutgers had a chance to recover a fumble on a punt. Max Melton was offsides. I get it that Greg Schiano did not think he was offsides. I know we were in the press box and sitting next to Pat Lanny. The moment the ball was recovered, Pat, you said, well, Melton was offsides. I mean, so you saw it. It looked like he lined up offsides to me. Again, besides the point, to me, the broader issue is that there are 30, 35 plays like that in the game. You know what I mean? There's just so many of them. You have a chance at a wheel route to get a first down. You miss the throw. You have a chance to hit Sean Ryan on a touchdown. You miss that throw. There's just one after miss a field goal. One after another.
It's one after another. And that was my question to Schiano. Like, why does this thing snowball so quickly? It's that mistake, and then the wheels fall off, and that's just the sign of a bad team. There's no other way to really put it. That's just the reality of the situation. Bad teams make mistakes over and over again, and that's what Rutgers is. It's just a bad team that makes a lot of mistakes. The third talking point that you don't have, Steve, is that he
Hit
loves
me.
to say that every game takes on a life of its own.
Yeah.
And that every game script is different. His theory in this game that if they recover that punt and they go in and score, they're up, what would be 17-7, and then they have the momentum on their side and everything's going to be different. So I don't buy it when you make avalanche of mistakes like that. So,
and every game, that's another one. Every game, I mean, I've seen that game before. I mean, like, I get life for your own. They come out, they play pretty hard, they have a good plan, they make a bunch of mistakes, the other team wins by 45. I've seen that movie. That's an old script. So I wouldn't say that's a new one. And it comes back to Gavin Wimsatt. You mentioned the pressure in this one, Brian. I get it. It wasn't good, but he's making the same mistakes. 10 of 29, 122 yards, a touchdown, and interception. The couple of throws early, I mentioned the wheel route that was just they were just off. And those are throws that I think any quarterback should make. I don't know if he's rushing it. That's what Greg Schiano said. I mean, you point out in your film review that of the 146 quarterbacks who've thrown at least 125 passes, only Colorado's JT Shrout has a lower completion percentage. I think only Colorado among Power 5 teams also has a worse record. It just really has not been a good first impression from Gavin Wimsatt.
Yeah, Colorado is currently what Rutgers was a few years ago during the dog days of the Chris Ash era. So essentially, Gavin Wimsatt is slightly better by 0.2 percentage points than Art Sikowski, which is not exactly what Rutgers fans were hoping for when he finally took over the reins. Again, the mitigating factors are worth pointing out. It's really hard to play that well when you have receivers dropping passes, when you have an offensive line that doesn't protect you. But missed passes are glaring. And the fact that they happen over and over, there's a handful of passes every game that one goes behind a receiver, one goes over a receiver's head, another one goes 5 feet in front of a receiver, another one is short so that the defensive backs intercept it. Even Greg Schiano admitted that if he pushed that ball to Sean Ryan down the sideline, he had 3 steps on his defender. That could have been a touchdown.
Yeah, it was the one throw he didn't overthrow, right? It's like the one time he didn't it wasn't a bullet. It was amazing. Yeah.
Right. And I get that it's against the wind, but still got to be able to make that pass. Yeah. I'm not sure yet if it's time to hit the alarm bells. He played a lot of good defenses. I think this was his 4th start, and 3 of them have been against top half defenses in the Big Ten. And the bad defense he played against Michigan State, he shredded them. If he plays well against Maryland, which also ranks in the bottom of the Big Ten, near the bottom of the Big Ten in offense, I think you could start to have a profile of a quarterback who's good enough to beat bad defenses, who is multiple steps away from competing against good defenses. And that's the gap he has to fill in the offseason, because from what we can gather, from what we can tell, all signs kind of seem to indicate that he will be the guy going forward. So he's going to have to, for him to take that next step, he's going to have to make some major leaps against defenses that are not tomato cans, essentially.
Right.
And one more point. When Rutgers can't run the ball, the whole burden falls on Wimsatt, and he's nowhere close to being good enough to carry this team on his back like that. So when the running game struggles, it's a microcosm of the whole team failing, offensive line, running backs, and then the pressure falls on the quarterback who can't make the plays. So it's just a losing combination.
And Brian, you make a good point about the Maryland game. And that is really, when you look at this game now, it's an important one, both for Wimsatt to get some confidence going into the offseason and for the program as a whole. I think 5-7 is a big difference than 4-8. It's a big difference, in going into the offseason with a win and being able to say, all right, we matched our win total from last year. There's a lot. We beat another similar program. We won 2 Big Ten games. There's a lot riding on this one. And I think a lot of it is also on Gavin Wimsatt. All right. So you had 3 starts. I mean, all right, let's see how you're going to perform in this one. Let's see against a bad defense. Let's see if you can make this, make something out of this offense. And because, I know Maryland's going to score points, right? So how is Rutgers going to counter that?
Absolutely agree. To your point, they've lost 6 of the last 7 Big Ten games. It's a brutal way to end a season, losing 7 of your last 8 games. Your only one coming against Indiana. Yeah, definitely a huge game just in that sense, and to give some confidence not only to the team but also to the fan base, which I'm sure is getting beat down by a lot of these losses in a row and the way they're happening.
The one matchup you do like for Rutgers against Maryland is the way that the defensive line played against Penn State, especially early on. They were pressuring Penn State like crazy. So if they can keep that pressure up, that'll put at least a little bit of constraint on Tagovailoa. So I would look for that.
All right, Brian, you broke this down. We're walking out of the press conference. We love it. You're walking out of the stadium to the press conference, and we're talking about what we're going to write. And Fonseca tells us, well, I'll do the bowl breakdown. And I nearly what? bowl breakdown, the 5-7 bowl breakdown. You broke it down and you say there's no hope, but I've seen some other projections that have a couple of 5-7 teams in there. Why don't you take us through this? Why I'm not going to be spending Christmas in Fort Worth based on your projections here if Rutgers does beat Maryland.
So first, a mea culpa. In my original story, I had said there were 75 bowl eligible teams. I accidentally counted James Madison and App State, who are not bowl eligible this year because they transitioned up. Okay, so there's 73. Now, there are 6 5-7 teams that are ahead of Rutgers in the APR, who, if it comes down to that, they would be ahead of Rutgers anyway. So essentially, that's 6 more slots. That's 79. There's going to be one other 6-win team on Tuesday because Ball State and Miami of Ohio are facing each other. They both have 6 wins. So that's 80.
Okay.
So there are 2 slots left, and there are 13 5-win teams that play on Saturday. Rutgers would need all 13 of those teams to lose. Would need UNLV to lose because UNLV is ahead of them in the APR rankings.
UNLV is ahead of Rutgers. Wait a minute. How the hell did that happen? Correct. UNLV is ahead of Rutgers?
UNLV is ahead of Rutgers.
What's wrong with those kids? I mean, good if you're in Las Vegas. Come on.
They were gambling on their futures by doing well in school.
I guess so. All right. Sorry to interrupt, but
you're fine.
Looking up the right APR.
Looking at there's that some blackjack term I don't know. Some hot tub fixture APR. Okay.
As far as I know, it was the right numbers for the most recent year. So essentially, what I'm saying is that Rutgers would need the miracle of all miracles what we're not talking about, they still have to beat Maryland. So we're even just assuming they're going to beat Maryland, which is no easy thing to happen. So no, we're not going to spend the day after Christmas in Detroit. Thank God. Mea culpa for messing up the 2 teams initially, but I don't think that makes a huge difference.
I still think you messed up Vegas's APR too. I just don't believe that. Jerry Tarkanian is rolling over in his grave with that. Come on.
Annual poker chips ratio.
Oh, see, that was good. It came up with that. Took you like you were thinking about that for like 90 seconds.
I was on mute. I was daydreaming. I got
it's fine. That's fine. Good job. All right. So no bowl game. I'm sure, and again, I think that's probably regardless what happens. Although I'm sure Greg Shannon would like the extra practice. That's probably the best thing for everyone involved. All right, let's dive into true or false. We've got some hot topics here. The first one especially. You know the rules. Here we go. True or false? The announced crowd of 55,676 really was the biggest crowd in SHI Stadium history. Brian, true or false?
Absolutely false.
Okay. Pat, you buying it?
Not buying it. False.
All right. We'll come back and talk. We'll talk about this one at the end here. True or false? The Nunzio era is finished. Greg Schiano will hire a new offensive coordinator. True or false? Brian?
I've been on the Nunzio's not keep the job train this whole time. I will stay on there, so I will say true.
Okay. Pat, you were on Team Nunzio last time, I think, right? I've lost track.
I am.
You staying there?
Still on Team Nunzio because I just believe that the team that Greg wants Nunzio to succeed, but even though the results haven't been there.
The team likes him. Yeah.
The team likes him.
All right. You going true?
True.
All right. I'm switching to false.
False. Right. False. The Nunzio era is not finished.
It's not finished. Okay, right. Yes, I'm sorry. Good job by you to listen to the statement. I'm going true. I think it's finished as well. Although last week I admit that I'm flopping on this one. Along those lines, true or false? Greg Shannon needs to hire a dedicated quarterbacks coach. Brian, will he do that? True or false? Need to? Will he?
False. Pretty much every team in the country has an offensive coordinator that doubles as the quarterbacks coach. So false.
Okay, Pat.
If your program is built around developing this quarterback, you better get the right quarterback coach. So
I guess it's true.
True.
All right. I'm gonna say false, but he's got to be the next OC. He's got to be a quarterback developer without question. All right. True or false? Adam Korsak will win the guy. This is the year that he will be the guy. True or false? Brian.
It has to be true, or else all the conspiracy theories have to be correct. He must win.
Pat.
He must win it. He must win it.
We've broken down the competition. I'll go true, of course, because I will never doubt him, but I'd like to see a breakdown of the competition here.
Oh, hot take alert. Tory Taylor from Iowa was not a semifinalist in the Ray Guy Award.
Really?
Not one of the, and for whatever reason, the semifinals of the Ray Guy Award list 8 candidates, and the Iowa punter is not one of them.
He's one of
shocking.
Yeah, it is shocking. That's got to be a big story out there in Ames. All right.
Ames is Iowa State, Steve. Your geography's wrong.
Close enough.
Iowa City.
Des Moines.
Also, Adam deserves even if he's not the best punter, he deserves a career achievement award or whatever they call those things.
I think it'd be more significant if he was an All-American because there've only been 4 or 5 of them in Rutgers history. That would be a fitting way to end his career. All right, true or false? We are blowing things out of proportion. Rutgers can beat Maryland, and the season will be a success if they beat Maryland. Does it change your opinion at 5-7? True or false, Brian?
Out of principle, we never blow things out of proportion, so I'll say false.
That's not our thing. Pat?
It does change the narrative. So
it does.
True.
All right, I'm gonna say true as well. It does change the narrative. All right, and finally, true or false? The basketball team is in real trouble if Paul Mulcahy doesn't return from his injury soon. Brian, you were up there in Foxwoods or Mohegan Sun, wherever the heck it was. True or false?
I went to both actually, and I will say true.
All right, Pat.
He is the catalyst. It looks like
he's the straw that stirs the drink. I will go true as well. All right, diving back into this one. Obviously, we got to talk about the crowd thing, and I come back to this with the crowd. I was there for the Penn State game in 2014. I saw that crowd. I felt the energy, the emotion. I knew how big that game was for both fan bases. This is going to be a Lloyd Benson quote here. Yeah, again, a person in history that I do not expect you to know, but I know the biggest crowd in Rutgers history. This was not the biggest crowd in Rutgers history. That one was just a better crowd. And what I don't understand, or I really don't understand, it's like my golf coach told me my freshman year, like, don't cheat in golf, because when you do actually you improve and you have a good round, it will diminish what you actually accomplished. Like, I don't get it. Like, why have 50, 55, 6, 7, 6 for this game? And what's going to happen when you actually get really good and you play Penn State and you have 56? Are you going to announce 68,000? I mean, what I just don't understand. It's just kind of like, all right, so that's the biggest crowd in Rutgers history. Is this random game against Penn State in November now? I mean, like, I don't know. I mean, we're probably making too much of this, but it just struck me as it was a good crowd, a nice crowd, probably the best crowd of the season. Was it the biggest crowd of all time? No. Your thoughts, Brian?
It seems ridiculous to say that there are 3,000 more people in the building than it can hold. So to your point, you might as well just say there's 68,000 people if we're not really accounting for space being used. It all feels really silly. I understand the scanner issue or whatever it is, or all the issues for the actual counting, but to exaggerate by that much, it feels completely unnecessary.
Well, how do you even do it? Do you just have like more tickets than seats? I mean, it's like, are there SROs? I have so many questions about it. I mean, Pat,
do they count recruits on the sideline, former players that stand on the sideline? That
they count you and me in the press box?
I don't know. I don't think so.
Yeah.
I mean, certainly, and it was a really good crowd. I thought it was traffic, the tailgate, crowd. The lots were filled early. I thought it was the best crowd of the year. It wasn't like if they said it was, like, I was outraged, but certainly I was like Nebraska coach Mickey Joseph with the Nebraska. I'm like, this is not give me a break. But this time I'm like, okay, well, this is a real sellout. But when they say, it's just, again, like, you announce it so.
The bigger issue is, well, one of the issues is the fact that about half that crowd, if not more, was in blue and white, and we're road fans. I think that's probably, if that number is correct and there really were 55,000 fans in there, I would be concerned if I'm Rutgers, because at least 30,000 of them were road fans, and your fans are selling tickets and not being there. So I would rather, if that's the case, I'd rather.
But what do you expect from a team has 4 wins and getting blown out regularly?
Yeah, I don't blame the fans for that either. Yeah, at a certain point, especially since the secondary market, the tickets were actually selling at a decent price. So
I don't blame the fans for not going. I blame Rutgers for touting a sellout when, again, most of the fans there are Penn State fans. I would think it'd be smarter to play down the amount of people that are there, so it doesn't seem like the entire place is State College East.
Nothing to see here, folks. Just a 23-5. All right, we won't belabor that anymore. But it was a moment when we all heard it. We're like, wow. Okay. So what else do we have to talk about here? Did we think that we're all kind of, you think Nunzio's going to make it just because of that, the strong bond? I mean, does the quarterback development thing not concern you a little bit here? And will Gavin Wimsatt have a say? Will his family have a say in who's the next coordinator?
Oh, wow. The family.
Are we at that point? Are we at that point at Rutgers where that's going to be a thing?
I hope not. That's the end of college football. If it is, if we're not there already.
We're already there. You kidding me?
But I still think when you look at the competition and when Gavin plays against lesser competition, you see what he can be. And I just think we haven't seen the whole scope of it through unbiased lens, because we talk about what he did off a terrible performance. It's too hard. It's too early to say he's developing or not developing. I'm still leaning towards Nunzio's going to get the job.
All right, Brian, take us through what happened up there in against Temple. I watched the first half. I knew there wasn't much of a need to watch the second half. They just looked completely out of sync. A lot of turnovers, a lot of trouble moving. I mean, what was the problem?
Yeah, it seems clear that Paul Mulcahy is, like you said, the straw that stirs the drink. He makes that offense go. It makes them move. Derek Simpson was put into a really tough spot, making his first career start in his fourth college game, in his first game away from Piscataway against a guard-dominant team that put a lot of pressure on him, forced him to miss all his shots essentially until the end of the game, forced him to turn over the ball a ton, forced him to kind of create off the dribble, which he's not ready to do at this level. So all that combined, and then the rest of the team kind of fell from there. And then they fell into that 19-point hole because of all the turnovers. Temple was hitting a lot of shots in the first half. And to Rutgers' credit, they pushed back. They closed the gap to 6 points with 6 minutes left and had a chance to get a win that they probably didn't deserve. But the bigger picture thing is that this team without its two veterans is in a very precarious spot. I think we knew that if they lost any of those one guys, Caleb, Paul, or Cliff, for an extended period, they'd be in big trouble. If they lose these two guys for an extended period, they're in major, major trouble. Paul might be out for a bit. There's no determined timeline here. I would be surprised if he played Tuesday. And as tough as the guy is, I mean, the kid was dressed. He was in his headband and everything, ready to play, but the coaching staff had to hold him back for his own sake, the coaching staff and the medical staff and all. I don't know when he'll come back. I can't imagine it'll be this week. Caleb is closer. I would not be surprised if Caleb plays Tuesday, though I could see him kind of holding back for another week. But he seems to be right on the edge of playing. But the Rutgers need those two guys back desperately by the time that Wake Forest, Miami, Seton Hall, Indiana, Ohio State stretch comes. Because if they're not around, those can become some ugly games.
That is and that's an important stretch to get through. They can't, I get you can have a couple losses early on. Temple didn't really affect their metrics as much as you would think. Temple's a good opponent, but obviously you've got some tough games coming up here early on. All right. Anything else we want to address here from that list? I think we covered our Corsac fandom here. Everything else is good. All right, let's dive into some insider questions. Thanks again for everybody being part of this during the season. We certainly appreciate it. And your questions were great as always. Almost all of them, not all of them, but most of them focused on Gavin Wimsatt, which is understandable. The one concern, this is from Pep, who played out offensive tackle for Rutgers College in 1980. Does Schiano have to look to the portal for a quarterback, or do we stay all in on Wimsatt? I think the answer to that question might be both. I think he needs to look in the portal. Do you agree, Brian? I mean, they got to find someone who can just fill out the quarterback room at this point.
Yeah, as we mentioned before, it's a really tough spot, though, because if you're not going to get a high-tier guy, because you're going to alienate, you have to pick either or. Either you get a high-tier guy to become your starting quarterback and alienate your quarterback of the future in Gavin, or you ride with Gavin and you realize that no real good proven quarterback is going to come to Rutgers because he knows that he's going to be competing with a guy who is the quarterback of the future. So they're going to have to pick a side. It seems like Gavin is probably the side they're going to take and probably the right side and the surest side for sure. The flip side is to get a kid to fill in depth at this point in high school might be tough. I know they're recruiting that kid from Ramapo, Jack Russer, the Harvard commit. I think Pat could probably shine some more light on that. Other than that, it's going to be tough to get a kid out of the portal because they're going to have to get a lower tier kid who's hoping to make a jump and impress people that haven't seen him, because otherwise there's no kid that's going to want to come to Rutgers when Gavin Wimsatt is the guy. So very precarious situation they have their quarterback. My guess is that they're just going to ride with Gavin, and I think that's probably the right choice given all the options they have.
Pat, do you want to bring us up to speed on
Grusser?
Yeah.
Okay. So I think Jack Grusser has a life decision to make first and foremost, and that's, do I go to Harvard and plan my life around being being successful after college, or do I go try to play my dream and play Big Ten football? So that's first and foremost for the kid himself, who is he's under the radar, in my opinion. And I think one of the best quarterbacks in New Jersey that's maybe just doesn't have the size, and that's why he doesn't have all the offers, but he can really sling it. He's one of the better kids that I ever saw in high school. Mm-hmm. So I think he slides in nicely as like a guy that can play backup and also push Gavin a little bit if that's the route he does go. But I'm still all in, to answer Pep's question. I'm still all in on Wimsatt. I just think we haven't seen enough of the whole picture. We've seen him play really good defenses, like I said, and the inaccuracy issues are certainly an issue. There's no question, but I think he can kind of fix those with time.
All right. So Brandon in Branchburg wants to know about his inability to run the ball. I guess we're not sure if Gavin Wimsatt is 100% as far as being able to run. He moves fine in the pocket. They run a few design runs. I think part of that is also that, again, you're playing good run defenses. It might just not be effective against Penn State and in Minnesota. I mean, what do you think, Brian? Have we not seen the full ability, a full skill set, a full package yet with Wimsatt?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of all those things. He had a couple of design runs against Penn State where he gained 9 yards and looked pretty decent. It seems like they are all hesitant to have him run a lot more than Sean Gleason was, certainly. He's only had 2 or 3 design runs in the last 3 games. It seems like his ankle, while he's good enough to play, is either still bothering him or they don't want to risk injuring it further. But I think he has the capability of running. He showed it against Boston College in that 148-yard run, which we keep referencing because it's the only big run he's really had, but he showed that. But I still think that he's more of a quarterback that throws and can run a little bit versus a quarterback that runs and can throw, if that makes sense. He has a dual threat, but he's going to win games for Rutgers if he ever does with his arm. I think there is a lot more for him that he can do with his legs. And yes, to your point, the offensive line struggling significantly does not help. The fact they have run for a combined, I think it was 64 yards in their last 2 home games against Michigan and Penn State, that doesn't help. So I think once all those factors are mitigated, if they improve the offensive line, if they give him more opportunities to run, I think he can show that aspect of his game.
Good question for you, Pat. What did the firing of Gleason actually accomplish? I don't see any difference whatsoever. I mean, in fairness, there are some differences that are evident, at least were evident early on. I don't think they wouldn't have run Sam Brown 30 times against Indiana. Remember, Nunzio figured that out, that we all figured that out, that before Sean Gleason did, that they should focus on their best running back. And he did that. The problem is Sam Brown got hurt and that changed a lot of it. But has Nunzio, in your mind, made as big of a difference in this offense?
I don't think the results show it. Obviously, the results are poor, but you're right. The Sam Brown injury was huge. I just think that the offense hasn't had a full cycle to really replace what Sean, like how much are you really going to change in the middle of the season, right? You're not going to change the playbook or all these philosophical things. Like I just think he hasn't really had a shot to really overhaul everything. Was Sean Gleason fired too early? I think maybe
you had to do it the bye week. Though.
Clearly been the scapegoat in this whole thing, like we said at the time. So to answer that question, I think he was.
It's tricky, I mean, I understand why he made that move, and I think we don't know the full picture. I think reading between the lines here, the players lost confidence in Sean Gleason's play calling. I think that's pretty clear.
And the unwillingness to just let Gavin be quarterback was also his downfall.
Right. That was another absolutely. Diving in some more. So we got some broader questions. This one's about NIL. Indiana coach Tom Allen said in his weekly radio show that at the beginning of the year, Indiana had 8 players getting $150,000 of NIL money. Do you think Rutgers is above or below this level? And what do you think Gavin makes in NIL money? I have no idea what Gavin makes in NIL money. He will not answer the question. It is a closely guarded secret. If I had to guess, I think Rutgers is below that. I don't see any signs that there are that many players getting, and it added up. 150 times 8 is 1.2 million. I don't know. I don't think that's there at all. Am I missing something, guys? I mean,
when we were doing some digging around what Gavin actually makes in NIL money, and if that 6-figure deal that he allegedly signed to come to Rutgers was true, we found out that he has 2 sponsors, one from the DevCo, who sponsors this podcast. Yes. Thank you very much.
Thank you, DevCo.
And
you're not paying us 6 figures, though. I'm pretty sure.
Right. And one from Miller's Rentals. So how much could that really be? It can't be significant enough to even come close to 150,000, in my opinion. I doubt. That's just my gut, though. Yeah, I have no actual proof of that. But
there's be an interesting development coming by the time this podcast is. It might be already out. I think Pat Hobbs, Rutgers athletic director, is going to go all in on the collectives. Is that your understanding as well, Brian? That we will see a statement encouraging people, and you've seen this everywhere, Oklahoma, Penn State, where athletic directors now are using the new guidance to become clear that, yes, please give money to our collectives. I think that's going to happen now at Rutgers.
Yes. Breaking news.
Is it out? I mean, could be.
I will read you the money quote from this letter.
Okay. You've got
I know you want to support our Scarlet Knights in any way you can. I encourage you to explore ways in which you, your business, or your contacts might benefit from engaging our student athletes in NIL opportunities, either directly through collectives such as the Knights of the Raritan and the Knight Society, or otherwise. So yes, Pat Hobbs has publicly endorsed NIL for the first time. It's only taken him 18 months to do so, but I guess it's better late than never.
He publicly endorsed the collectives, not NIL. He's been talking about, it's a step. And I think the key now is seeing, all right, so what can the athletic department and the collectives do together to jumpstart this, right? As opposed to, hoping that John Newman's Twitter feed is enough to raise money to keep this defense together. All right, well, what's going to happen now to add to that? How can there be a symbiotic relationship here? Complementary fundraising, and to borrow a Greg Shannon term. I don't know if that's going to solve the problem or not, but certainly it's a step in the right direction. All right, question about the Big Ten. If you guys have been reading our series on the Big Ten, we think we're just about halfway through, maybe a third of the way through. Looking at the 10-year anniversary of the Big Ten. Regarding today's article was about what the Big Ten's impact is on the university as a whole. I learned a ton of things that I honestly just didn't know. I took time away from a man researching cancer treatments for liver cancer to talk about how the Big Ten is helping make that easier. I mean, that's just the easiest way to say it. I could explain to you exactly how, but when he wants to do a study, instead of having to arrange a study with lots of different places, there's a Big Ten cancer consortium that sets it up for him. So then he can do these trials that the drug companies won't do. I mean, I don't know. That's pretty cool. And like something, every time I get an email from someone who says Rutgers should leave the Big Ten, I'm just going to forward them this story. All right, you want to leave this behind? Seems pretty important. Anyway, so the reader wants to know what's the value of that? It sure would be nice if we can flash the number of how much that money, the price tag of all that to the naysayers. I don't know that you can, but I will say that Robert Barchi, the former president, when asked about this, he mentioned that just the publicity alone, his direct quote was, how much would it cost to have all those ads on the Big Ten network? 25 million, 50 million? I couldn't even put a price tag on it, is what he told me. So again, it's just stuff from the Big Ten that you don't see. To answer that question, I'll handle that one, fellas. All right, let's see what else we got here. Oh, here's one from Kevin McKill. Was Melton offsides on the punt? What do we think? You watched it again, Brian? I mean, we thought it was offsides live. Was he offsides?
So it's hard to tell from the one camera angle they gave us. They didn't give us the head on over the football with the World Cup on. I guess it's a good comparison to make. I needed a VAR overhead view to really tell. But from what I could tell, and from what I remember seeing in the press box, he was offside, though obviously Greg Schiano did not agree and was very, very upset about it, to the point where he was screaming at the referee for about 4 more plays after that. He was so upset, he was laughing in the referee's face. And I believe the quote I was able to get from the lip read was, try me. And I don't think the referee tried him. So
they're going to take him at the back of the one of the food trucks, and is that what that was headed?
And share a fat sandwich? Is that what you're saying?
No, yeah. The fat lip. Yeah.
Yes. I don't know, but I don't know if that's exactly what he said, but as we could tell, I'm not the greatest lip reader of all time, but I do believe he was very, 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 very upset. And as he mentioned after the game, you don't congratulate a guy when you're talking like that. So,
wow.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of fodder for the Rutgers conspiracy theorists this year, penalty wise. I mean, the officiating, again, it's not as bad as, Miles Johnson in basketball and a few that have happened that way, but it's been pretty rough.
Milton jumped off sides and tried to get back on sides, and he didn't get back in time. That's what it was. End of story.
End of story. All right. No conspiracy here, as you were. All right. I think that's all the questions we have, pretty much. Appreciate everyone for contributing, as always. Follow us on Twitter at Rutgers Rant, and we'll answer your questions there as well. All right. Prediction. So I think that means you won, Fonseca. Congratulations. And congratulations to you, Pat, for having the wrongest pick in the history of the podcast. Congratulations. Picking 21-20 Rutgers victory and encouraging and getting the fans' hopes up that I would go swimming in the Raritan River. And when it was 3-0, it was like, you were like, oh, yeah.
Oh, we're doing it.
Talking to Andy Mills.
10-7. 10-7.
Andy's got a wetsuit in his car. We're going to throw Politi in the Raritan.
10-7.
Like, God, you guys are so this.
The game took a life of its own. That's what happened.
Like
the game and the pick took a life of their own.
Like 4 minutes into a first quarter, it's going to last an hour and a half, and you're like, oh, What do we do? We're gonna do this tomorrow. We're gonna do it tonight. Do you want to wait till it's a warmer day? Like,
Get a good sunlight. Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that I'm not gonna go swimming, but appreciate the sentiments anyway. So, what's the line on this game? I didn't even look.
It was 2 touchdowns when I saw it yesterday. I don't know if it's moved since.
Really?
Maryland minus 14.
Wow, holy cow. Okay. Well, you're leading, not that it matters anymore, but you can put a ribbon on this. What do you got?
Well, I could pick anything I want, right? And
well, I mean, yeah,
Upset.
but there's pride involved, so
you're right. You know, as for the listeners, all of them that are using my picks to make millions of dollars, I need to continue to support that. I think this game will be close early, and I think one team is going to pull away. That team is I think Maryland's going to win decently big. I'll go Maryland 31, Rutgers 13.
okay. So Maryland cover. Gotcha. Pat, this battle for second now.
Oh, there is.
I think so. I don't know.
Yeah, there's a battle for second.
So,
but
I'll let you go
as we
first.
said before, this season takes a different narrative if Rutgers wins this game. And the way the defense played against Penn State was encouraging, at least for those first minutes of the first quarter where we sent you snorkels. I think this is a halfway decent matchup for Rutgers. I think it's going to be competitive. I'm still going to take Maryland to win, but I'm going to take Rutgers with the points. So let's go Maryland 35, Rutgers 28. The offense finally does something.
Okay. You know, I think, and just because I can't, it doesn't matter. I'm not playing for second. I'll take the result. I think it's going to happen exactly as you described. So you will finish second, I guess. Like a 31-27 type game, Maryland victory. You know, I mean, I think we will see enough from Gavin Wimsatt in this one that will feel more encouraged. They can't spot another Big Ten team 2 touchdowns. I don't think so. And Maryland isn't as good defensively. So you would think that, but I just think that the quarterback for Maryland is too good for that. And the way they played, look at the way they played against Ohio State. It looked like they had quit a week earlier in Penn State. Maryland looked like they were just done with the season, but certainly that proved, taking Ohio State to the final minute proved that they weren't. So that's going to be my pick there. All right. Other thoughts? Can we issue our correction here on the pronunciation of the men's soccer coach's name, Brian? Would you like to make that mea culpa?
I will make the mea culpa. I don't know if I could actually say it correctly.
You had a week. You don't know if you could actually say it correctly. It's the whole point of this.
Because every time I think I say it right, I say it wrong.
Get an email.
My mind is in a pretzel. I was really hoping that you knew how to say it, Steve.
Well, no, that you know I wasn't going to do that. I finally got Cliff Omori and Joe Harris. Oh crap,
Harris-Simiak.
I worked all week on Harris-Simiak.
Should have spent more time on Jim
Nunzio.
McElderry.
I think it's Jim McElderry. I think last week I said McElderry, which is
you
incorrect.
said McElderry. Yes.
Jim McElderry.
Yes.
Great guy.
Great season.
Best season as a member of the Big Ten. Put some hope into this program and what it could be. I was at the game in Pennsylvania, in Philadelphia.
Yeah, what happened there? Yeah.
It was very cold, first of all. And it was in a makeshift intramural turf field because their actual stadium is under construction. They're building a track and field complex, and it won't be open until 2024. So they had to play on this small field that looked like where I played my intramurals at Rutgers. And Rutgers conceded a goal within 65 seconds. They were losing for the final 89 minutes. They were they were chasing the ball in the game the rest of the way, and they were never really able to climb back into the game. So tough way to go out, but I think as I wrote, Rutgers was playing with house money, essentially. It really didn't matter what happened. They already pulled off the most successful season in the Big Ten and really set a foundation for the program to get back to its glory days in the 90s. So, Jim McElderry in the front running, I think, for the best season of program at Rutgers this year. And I'm not sure if any other program will be able to top it this year. I think very, very impressive fall for them and the boys.
Good. I know you guys were doing the press conference with you. Good month overall for Rutgers soccer, and then you have Alexi Lawless and Carly Lloyd talking Rutgers like they're old bros on the World Cup, like 30 minutes before the kickoff of the first World Cup game. There are the two of the probably 5 best athletes in Rutgers history standing up there on national television talking Rutgers. So that's good publicity.
Let's go off that. Do you guys want to give your World Cup predictions now, or do you guys want to?
Sure, absolutely. Yep. Go. I'm ready. Okay.
Who you got winning the whole thing, Steve? What do you got?
I'm gonna go with Germany. Yeah, I like that.
Who you got, Pat?
England.
England.
Solid choice, fellas. England made to the final last time. Or that was the Euro. Never mind. Anyway, I've drinking all the Kool-Aid, all the Jutopia. I think Portugal's going to win the World Cup. I think they're going to. I am so ready to have my heart absolutely destroyed. So I am looking forward to spending Thanksgiving in absolute agony watching them draw against Ghana. So this will be the worst turkey of my life.
We're going to have to cancel the podcast if Portugal wins the World Cup. This is not going. We're not going to handle that.
You will find me in New Brunswick streaking with a Portuguese flag wrapped around my waist. I make that promise on the pod.
Do you take, so if Brazil wins it, because Portugal colonized Brazil, do you take that as a victory as a Portuguese person?
I think there is no team I would rather not win the World Cup than Brazil.
Why is that? Aren't they your people? I mean, Brazil, Portugal, no, that's not the same.
Well, I think they don't like us on account of us colonizing them. And
I think it was was the colonization not a good thing? Was that a bad thing? Okay, good point.
Yes, but I also grew up in Kearney in Newark area where there's a lot of Portuguese people and Brazilian people, and things get tense around this time. Yeah, I don't like I like Brazilian people. I don't like the Brazilian national team. I don't like the Spanish national team. I very much dislike the French national team. But the people, great people, just don't like their soccer teams. That's all.
Right. Yeah. Italy didn't even make it, Pat. So we don't even. Yeah. I mean, come on. How's that happen? Good grief.
They won the Euro Cup.
Italy did?
Yeah.
Oh, and why didn't they?
Didn't qualify.
There's not automatic qualifiers. It's not like winning the Northeast Conference.
The World Cup is not the NCAA tournament, Steve. No.
The World Cup.
Italy couldn't get past the powerhouse that is North Macedonia, so they could not make the World Cup.
Like losing to FDU in the first round. All right, I think that's enough for today's show.
No, not yet, Pat. Give us some scoop on wrestling.
Yes, of course. Thank you.
Wrestling brought to you by Brian Saldano, the awesome freshman. He was on an absolute tear. Came into the rankings this week at number 15. All 4 of his wins were by bonus points. And then last night in the Roadrunner Open at Cal State Bakerfield, had a chance to wrestle the number 6 kid in the country. And it was a really close match. He trailed early and just never got back on, never was able to flip the score essentially. And Saldano took his first L, but he's been the real headliner of that team. Rutgers also beat Stanford while it's in California. So they're 3-1. It's an off week. And then next Sunday, they'll wrestle Penn and Drexel at the Prudential Center. And I'll be there covering that one.
For those of us who don't follow the wrestling, could you give us a little bit more about Saldano? Where's he from? Was he expected to be this good?
Saldano was a 3-time state champ from High Point, and he has this crazy style that no one was really sure how it was going to translate to college wrestling. Like he always goes to his back and puts himself in vulnerable positions. So he's really unique in that sense. And the big thing was like, holy cow, it really does translate. He's beating all these ranked guys. He was the number 8 recruit in the country for his class, and really like the headliner of that class. So he's highly touted. He could be one of their next All-Americans, if not national champ when all is said and done.
Excellent. All right. Well, we'll monitor that. We've got a lot going on to monitor with this wrestling season, basketball season, everything get going. Of course, one more football game. We'll be back next week to talk about that. Everyone, have a great Thanksgiving. We're thankful for you for listening. Thankful for Deb for sponsoring, for everybody contributing your questions. Signing off for Pat and Brian. Thanks for listening.
Thank you for listening to the Rutgers Rant. To participate in the conversation and receive live updates about the Scarlet Knights directly to your phone, sign up at NJ.com/insider.